Is your surname, is it Mackay? McKay, how do you pronounce it?
Mackay, yeah, Mackay,
Mackay. The Scottish way.
yeah. There's some Aberdeen blood in me.
Is there? All right, okay. So you're a hardy soul then.
I wouldn't say that.
Going OB Golf.
Yeah, Callum from the Clutch Tour, thanks for coming on the Go No Be Golf podcast and taking time to speak to me today. How's
No,
things
thank
in
you for
sunny
having me.
London? How's things in sunny London?
It's, it's not sunny,
Ah,
far from actually.
you can't have as bad the weather as we've got. We're under inches of snow up here, so courses are closed left, right, and centre, and traffic just grinds to a halt when we get a wee bit of snow up here. But
Yeah, I don't think we're any better at driving down here, but yeah, no, it's nice to be inside in the warm.
yeah, range sessions, eh? They're all
Yeah,
simulator sessions
exactly,
at the moment.
exactly.
So So I was having a bit of a dive through of Instagram, on the lookout for some guests for the podcast this year. As I was explaining to you just before we started, there we're trying to kind of shine a light on the other side of the game. I came across the Clutch Tour. I have known about you for a while. I've kind of kept an eye on things, but I thought I'm going to reach out, see if I can get you to come on and just explain a bit about what the Clutch Tour is, kind of inspiration for creating it, how people can get involved. So, really, that's what I kind of want to talk to you about today. So, what
Yeah, great.
is the Clutch Pro Tour?
So, Clutch Pro Tour is basically a development level golf tour. So, if you think of the pyramid of professional golf, or even we have an elite amateur and amateur levels within as well. So, you think the DP World Tour sits at the very top, then you've got the Challenge Tour beneath, and you've got an abundance of satellite tours all around Europe. And Clutch, since its formation in 2019, has now grown to be the leading development tour in Europe, especially in the UK. Obviously, you've got the great things that Tartan Tour up there in Scotland are doing. And as I said, there's an abundance of other tours around the continent as well. But yeah, just throughout the 5 year, coming up to 6 year period now that Clutch has been running, it's formed into the leading development tour, and we basically feed the Challenge Tour. We feed the Challenge Tour and DP World Tour with players through incentives and invites, and play a year-round schedule. Well, for most of the year anyway. The schedule this coming season is 19 events, to be involved in the main tier one develop. I'll touch on that later, but the main tier one schedule that runs through into the challenge tour. So yeah, we're a pathway development tour. And that's the fundamentals of what Clutch is really. We we're a tournament platform.
Yeah, yeah. So very competitive then, I guess, particularly when you're talking
Yeah,
about these high elite level amateurs.
yeah, so most of the field is professionals. So we're filling fields of 156 to 140, 156 week in, week out, in that event schedule. I'd say that 90% of that is young professionals, not necessarily all young professionals, but professionals trying to make their way through the ranks. The other 10% would probably be that elite amateur category that's sort of maybe dipping their toe into thinking about turning pro, or trying to just maybe come off the back of their university careers in America or over here, and playing full-time amateur golf for a little bit and think, yeah, now I'm going to turn pro and give it a go. So that's sort of the makeup of the field, but we're averaging, yeah, over 130 players a week. So there's big
Oh, brilliant.
demand for it. We know there's big demand for it. um but it's a hard slog. It always has been. Development golf is never easy. All of us that work at the tour. So the founder, Tom Haywood, um, is a former development tour player. His co-founder, his fiance Lily, she's actually worked in different aspects away from golf, so she's a big help on the media side. That's what she used to do before setting up the tour. So then myself and a couple of others, we all played professionally as well. We put ourselves in the failed professionals group, so now we've got to go and do something else. So our failed professional careers, so now we work in golf. But I think that gives us a lot of insight into, we look back at our own careers or the tours that we played on, what could have been better, what did they do well, and try and take all those aspects and try and put them into Clutch. by no means do we get that right all the time. Like any job, it's a learning curve. But our most valuable commodity is the players. So we have to listen to them and see what we can do to make that transition better and try and get as many players as we can through to the next level.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And it is just giving people, as you said, giving people a platform to go out and try these type of things. So you explained there just a bit about kind of the tier system. So how does that work?
Yes. So historically, Clutch has always been an open access platform. So since its formation in 2019, you didn't have to have any formal status to play on the tour. So you could just pay to enter, and then we play for the prize funds on offer. As the tour has grown and demand has become higher, we've sort of changed that. So this year is the first year that we'll categorize players. So we had a Q school last year. So a bit like you'd sort of see in your more traditional tours where you have categories of players. Um, and then the tier structure. So the tier one platform, which is the 19 events this season. So 12 events in the UK and then 7 international events. And that's inclusive of the Tour Championships, which is going to be out in the UAE this coming year. So that's basically the main schedule to get to the Challenge Tour. So what we have on offer is over 30 Challenge Tour invites, and the top 3 on the order of merit from that entire season will graduate to the Challenge Tour with a full card. The tier 2 platform is not to say that it's any less competitive. That isn't what it is at all. But there's certain criteria that we have to have for tier 1, like all the events are 54 holes with a 36-hole cut. There's OWGR. We've now got official world golf ranking points on the tier 1, whereas tier 2 is more just a historical, like I call a lot of mini tours, it's an organized gambling. You come in, you pay your money to enter, and the guy that shoots 62 on the day takes home the winnings. So that's what the tier 2 is, but it's more so a platform, and the reason it's there is for people that maybe those amateurs that aren't in the elite category or whatever it may be can basically dip their toe in the water of that tournament life, playing with the professionals, seeing what it's like to travel around the country and play golf for a living, and then hopefully move on to the tier 1. So the top 15 out of the tier 2 order of merit over the season will graduate to tier 1 with a full card for the next year. So there's a continuation through the ranks, which we quite like.
Yeah. And what sort of handicaps are you talking about for the elite guys then? High pluses and
Yeah, the elite amateurs tier 1, you're probably looking at scratch or better. We'll take the entries for there. But tier 2 is literally open to anyone. So, you could be a 10 handicap and you just want that feeling of what's it like to play in a professional event alongside a professional. You can enter. There's different pricing and different pricing for the entry. So, if you are a professional, you're going to play slightly higher than your amateur because obviously you can win the money. But then we pay out the amateurs the maximum they can for the R&A allowance anyway. So it's a really, really good sort of, as I said, experience is probably the great word to use for the amateurs, that you can play some really good golf courses, but be in that environment of a professional event. And then
yeah.
if you perform well enough, or you think you're doing well enough, then to give qualifying school and try and get into that tier 1 level and beyond is what it's there for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did like that when I had a look on the website and obviously seen the 2 tiers, and I seen a maximum of 18 for tier 2, and I'm just under that at 17. I was like, oh, I would give this a go at some point, just to see.
Come along.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just to come along and see what it's like to compete in one of these events. So I have in the past ran a couple of kind of charity events, right? And we've had a couple where the weather's been really bad, or there's been something's happened, the catering's gone off sick, or something, and it's got a bit stressful with that. Now that's just a charity event where people are coming along to. I can only imagine that it is amplified tenfold if it was something that you were running into. So have you had any issues before, running any problems? how are you quite good at firefighting if there's any of these things that need a bit of a
Yeah, I think
pivot?
when you're running 19, well, including the tier 2, we're running close to 40 events in the year. You can guarantee that there is always going to be certain things that prop up. Over the years, I think the biggest things that we've learned is that our venue agreements with the golf clubs themselves are always airtight. We spend a lot of work and a lot of time behind the scenes making sure and liaising with the golf clubs months before the tournament is even played, to just make sure that everything's set, making sure that we want the golf course how we want it, or as good a condition it can be, and working with the greenskeeping team at each club. So things like that it's a bit like being a professional athlete. If you feel like you're prepared, you're going to probably have a good week.
Yeah,
And it's about that preparation. The second side of it is that when things do prop up, it's about communication. How well can you communicate to the players? By no means do we always get that right, and it's something that we could always be better at. There's no doubt about that. But it's about how do you communicate either what's going on, or um what the circumstances are with your players, because as I said at the start, they are by far our most valuable commodity. Without them, there is no tour. So it's about listening to them. They will there's always going to be a headbutt. They always might want something that you can't provide, or you might have a difference of opinion. But when it comes to exceptional circumstances, it's always about communication. You just have to communicate everything in the right way.
yeah, but no issues.
Um,
I'm not
apart
putting you on
from
the spot with that one.
apart from the glorious UK weather, it
Yeah,
doesn't really happen. As I said, we work closely with the venues. We're really appreciative of the venues that we go to. I s- it's very, very hard here in the UK, especially our tier 1 events, where we're asking for a golf course for 4 days minimum. Now that
mhm,
takes out a lot of golf clubs in the UK, because we're asking for the main season as well. May through September is your golfing window for tournament golf in the UK. And to ask the golf clubs, can you give up your golf course for 4 days? Sometimes that's just not possible, or the cost of that for us to run an event is astronomical, so we can't go. So um, I still think I still think there's a bit of a stigma maybe around professional golf in the UK. I always think if we said we were running high class England amateur events, the golf courses would probably have, no problem giving it up. Yeah, I think there might be a little bit of a stigma, but it just also shows that the golf clubs we do go to and how much we value them, and their support for being involved in this platform and providing for these players. It's all the more important.
yeah. We so my co-host Oliver, he competes on the EDGA, which is the golfers with disabilities. So we were having a discussion the other day.
Fantastic.
We're playing in I'm caddying for him, so but it's a team effort. He's going to be playing in the Scottish Open in May this year at a golf course through the west. But that is the only Scottish event that's on that calendar. So we kind of half decided, we could maybe look at trying to put on a golf event, and it became like we could maybe do this, and we could do that.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, I'm probably better speaking to a professional first before I dip my toe in the water of trying to put on an event that would be something like that. We spoke to my other co-host Danny. She's an ex-LET player, and she's now playing high-level amateur stuff. She plays for, I think it's Kent Ladies, and she said they struggle to get golf courses that will let them come in and do 2 or 3 day worth of competition, just because of like finances and yeah, things
Yeah,
like
it's
that's difficult.
when you go into these golf clubs, if they're members golf clubs, that's their priority, isn't it?
Mhm.
Whatever golf club you're at, if you're a member at that club, you're always going to get, oh, we're closing the course from Monday to Friday. You're not going to be very happy. So, I understand the position that they're in, and that's obviously going to be their highest priority. It's just, it surprises me, when you look on the continent or you look abroad, how easy it is to get golf courses compared to here in the UK, where, we seem to have this thing against tournament golf, which is, it's not going to change overnight.
Mm.
But that's why I said it's important to keep those relationships with those golf clubs, because they're doing something bigger than just the finances for themselves. They're supporting, the thousands of guys that want the opportunity to go further and play golf.
Yeah. And I suppose as well, at this time of the kind of current economic climate, a lot of the golf courses are suffering, and there's a lot of them closing and things. So if it means that they give up a week's worth of their course for an event like this that draws a bit of attention, gets eyeballs to the course, and then people see about it and think, oh, that look like a really good event. Or some of the guys that have played in it maybe come back with their touring groups. Then, yeah, everybody kind of working together, we can might build up momentum and build it back up again.
Yeah, I think that's and you touch on a good point there. All the golf courses that we go to, we take a full media team, photography, videography. We've had Sky Sports covering some of the events. So we'd like to think that for those golf courses, they're seeing a big media influx, which hopefully then promotes more people to play the golf course, and that it also gives them an opportunity to showcase their own venue. And that's what you want. You want to turn up to these golf courses and that they've put their full effort in and full pride into making it look as immaculate as possible. We capture that. And then hopefully people go and spread the word about how good that golf course actually is. So we'd love, that's the return that we provide for
Yeah,
the golf courses, and that we'd hope that they'd want to invest in. But sometimes that's a big ask.
yeah. Definitely sounds like a plus plus though, eh? Should say like
To
a
me, it
plus
does.
plus. Yeah. So what about some of your success stories then, that have gone on to challenge tour and further?
Yeah, I think so. The challenge tour aspect of it, we've had the invites, but only for the last 2 seasons. Prior to this, have we had actual full cards going through. Um, but probably, when you talk about the success of players, our job is to try and get guys off the mini tours as quickly as possible and onto the challenge tour. That's what we want. If you're hanging around for years and years and years playing mini tour golf, it's hard to move on from there. Whereas which we want to see the cycles of players only being 2-3 years, get on, get off, graduate to the challenge tour. So we've had players like Brandon Robinson Thompson, is probably a great example. He won 3 times on clutch, and then with his ranking or his position in the order of merit at that point in the season, we gave him 7 invites into the challenge tour. So that was his ticket onto the challenge tour, and then he went to the Irish Challenge a couple of weeks later and won his first start on the Challenge Tour and won the event, which guaranteed his status on the Challenge Tour for the rest of the season. Unfortunately, he didn't make his DP World Tour card that season, which he was very close to doing, but he's made his DP World Tour card the season after. So Brandon's playing DP World Tour this year. And look, I don't think it's ever right for the tour to. I don't think you can ever take um, what's the word I'm really looking for? But you can't take the players have got there on their own. We provide them with the starts, but we've got nothing to do with how they're performing.
Mm.
Brandon is a fantastic golfer that's made his way through the ranks on his own accord. But you'd like to think that all the players that have come through, whether it's George Bloor, Curtis Snipes, Tom Shadbolt, all of those guys that we've given maybe a helping hand, an opportunity to from their good. They've earned the right to be there through good play, but you would think without the tour, maybe you wouldn't be there. So yeah, Brandon's probably the player that's gone on to do the most so far. But when we're graduating, hopefully 5-6 guys a season, we'll start to see a lot more to guys get to that top level in years to come.
Yeah, great. Anybody we should be looking out for just now, out of the kind of current crop?
You've got so last year we had Gary King, Ryan Evans and Callum Barrow graduate off the Clutch Pro Tour, so they'll be making their fresh Challenge Tour debuts. Well, not debuts as such, because Ryan and Gary have played a bit of Challenge Tour before, but and then previous to that, George Bloor has kept his card on the Challenge Tour last season, so we'd be looking for him to push on next year. And then there's an abundance of guys that have got their invites coming up for next season, so your likes of Ollie Huggins, Callum Farr, yeah, many guys to pick from. So we're all looking for them to hopefully progress their careers on, and that hopefully they, are shining lights on the DP World Tour one day.
Yep, superb. So, if people want to get involved, how do they go about that?
It's quite simple, really. We've got a great Instagram page. People, members of staff are always looking through. So if you need to reach out, please get in touch with us on Instagram. Clutch Pro Tour is at Clutch Pro Tour is the handle. Happy to answer any questions you have on there. There's a lot of information on there regarding schedule, and how the tour operates. But you can always go to the Clutch Pro Tour website itself. Has all the information laid out on there, how the tier structures work, cost of entries, all of that stuff. Or it just always feel free to email and phone. The old school way always works.
Yeah.
We're happy to help, and we really, as I said, we want to see these new cycles of players coming in. Doesn't matter what age that is, but if you want to give it a go, we'd like to think that Clutch is the best opportunity out there for you to do that, especially at the professional level with £50,000 prize purses every week. We're by far the highest in Europe, so we'd like to think that in the development level tour, sorry, not like competing. I don't want any backlash against not competing with the DP World Tour, but the yeah, it's we'd like to think that we've got the best offerings out there. So we'd love to have people come and play the tour, obviously. So there'll be qualifying school come the end of the season for anyone sort of playing throughout the year. But as I said, there's always that open access category, so you can come and play any events. You can always sign up.
Brilliant. Well, I will have a look at it. I'll get back on the Instagram, get on the website, which is it's just clutchprotour.co.uk.
That's
So
it.
I'll get on that. And anybody else that is interested, please reach out to Callum and the guys at Clutch Pro Tour, and let's get some people playing your events. And then
Absolutely.
they can come on and tell me how much fun they had when they played your events. So that's
Hopefully so.
perfect. Yeah, perfect. Thanks very much for jumping on, Callum. Like I said, it was
No, thank
something
you.
I was interested
Appreciate
in
your time.
finding out, kind of how it all worked. Something away from the kind of quote unquote big leagues, and we'll see what comes of it in the year. And if you ever want to jump back on again, if you've got any events coming up, just give me a shout. More than happy to have you back on again.
No, we'll do. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much for having us.
Perfect. Cheers.
Cheers, Craig. Thank you.